I am so happy that today we're able to have Dr. Schexnaildre with us. I think we're incredibly fortunate to have him come and speak to us today. He's a phenomenal psychologist. He is coming to us virtually from New Orleans, where undoubtedly he has been eating better food than I have. Although we have a walk-ons now, and we went there yesterday and it was pretty good. It's probably not the same as the original one, but he is originally trained, went to his doctoral program at Louisiana State University, go Tigers. He did his pre-doctoral internship training at the Kennedy Krieger Institute at Johns Hopkins, where he was in the Child and Family Therapy Clinic. And he currently works at CBT Nola as the director of child and adolescent services in their clinic. And he is here today to talk to us about the SPACE program, which is a new program designed to help parents of anxious children. So Dr. Schexnaildre, please take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Corwin. All right. So yeah, we'll be talking about SPACE. SPACE is a program I got trained in a couple of years ago and have been using ever since and have really enjoyed and found a lot of really great uses for. So SPACE stands for Supportive Parenting for Anxious Childhood Emotions. This all comes out of the lab at Yale of Ellie Leibowitz and his colleagues. So today we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the nature of childhood anxiety and why SPACE is such a great application for childhood anxiety. And so SPACE is a parent training program. So we're going to talk about a couple big components there: how to train parents to communicate support to their kids, and then also to how to get rid of this accommodation that they're doing, how they're participating in their child's anxiety. We're also going to find some ways to foster some independence in their kids and hopefully give the parents some of their time back and some of their life back that they've been devoting to their kids so much. So okay, so why are we working only with parents in this program? So we have CBT for anxiety, pretty much the gold standard for kids and adolescents. But so I've been doing this kind of treatment over the years and have always run into a couple of obstacles with, what if these kids won't participate? What if their life is pretty good? Their parents make their lives really comfortable and they don't ever have to be very anxious. They don't feel very anxious a lot of the time, but when their parents kind of pull back as they want to, they have some kind of emotional outburst or something. And so the parents go right back to accommodating. So if the kids want to participate in treatment, you're kind of, your hands are kind of tied. There's only so much you can do within a lot of these other CBT programs for childhood anxiety. So that's kind of been an obstacle. I've also seen like a lot of these just really exhausted parents. They might be working and they're coming home and then accommodating and seeing to every need of their anxious child is like a whole other job that they have to do, outside of just normal parenting. And so, they'll, if I remember instances of doing like a structured interview, like the ADIS or something, and I'll talk about the anxiety, and they're like, oh no, my kid isn't anxious as long as I blank, as long as I sleep in bed with him, as long as I speak up for her at restaurants. So no, they don't have any anxiety as long as I am doing all these things for them. So it seemed to me like there needed to be something, there was some kind of gap in the treatment, and that is where SPACE comes in here. So let me back up a little bit, talk about the nature of childhood anxiety. So in young mammals, including humans, fear is a social response. When little kids get anxious, they express it as like towards their caregivers, as a way to like say, come, I need help. I need something's wrong. I'm terribly afraid of something. Come help me. At the same time, the parents are very much in tune to these cues. We look for when our kids are anxious and how to protect them, or if they're in danger, or if they're just expressing any kind of big emotion, how to comfort them. So we've got these two forces kind of working against us here when it comes to excessive anxiety. So when kids are anxious, or they're scared, or they're crying or something, it very much taps into this urge that we have, this kind of instinct to protect and comfort our kids. Um, this ends up, this is pretty normal, but this can become a problem if a child has an anxiety disorder, and they have a lot of fear of potentially like non-threatening things. And so the parents end up working very hard and spending a lot of time responding to these fears, and making sure their kids are comfortable. So what they end up doing is changing so many things about their lives and their normal days, and that's where we introduce the concept of accommodation. So we're not talking about classroom accommodations like 504 accommodations. We're talking about parental accommodation. So this is any kind of behavior that is where the parents are trying to help the child avoid distress caused by their anxiety disorder, any kind of excessive anxiety. So it's you're kind of helping the kids, or you're kind of coping for the kids, or regulating the emotion for these children. Um, so, we're programmed as parents to protect our kids from the actually dangerous stuff. But when children are expressing fear many times a day to things that really don't have any realistic threat to the child, um, it can be exhausting, and you're like I said, committing a lot of time to this stuff. So we've probably heard about these types of things all the time, like sleeping in their beds, um, helping them go to a store, or speaking up for themselves, things like that. So accommodation ends up being a big part of the space program, so we spend a lot of time identifying and figuring out how to stop accommodating, how to change this parental behavior. So here's a couple of examples of accommodation and the situations we might see it in. So when you bring your child to a restaurant, and it's like age appropriate, that they could potentially order for themselves, they kind of turn away, they get shy, they stare off or something. So the parents speak up for them. They ask a lot of questions about the schedule. When is this going to happen? Who's picking me up? How long am I going to be there? The parents answer every single question with as much certainty as they can. They have if the kid has a meltdown, if they can't see mom, so the mom stays really close to them, leaving the door open if she's going to the bathroom, maybe even calling out when she moves around the house, like an example we'll talk about later on. And even spending as much time as 20 minutes looking for spiders and other bugs at bedtime. So a lot of these things, you can see how the parents are kind of participating in their child's anxiety, and how much time and effort that can take, and how much of your life can just change over time. So we all kind of do this as parents. We're all going to accommodate our kids to a certain degree. And some of this goes back to attachment, where we're kind of we're programmed to do this stuff, to soothe them, to provide protection. My daughter was sick this morning, and of course I jump to her, and I comfort her, I hug her, and I tell her it's going to be okay. I'm gonna get her some water. I'm going to stay with her. She's sick. So I think most parents accommodate. Good parents accommodate. When we see our kids upset, and I think in these moments, in these individual moments, it's hard to know, am I feeding into some anxiety, or is just me being a good parent? So I think space can kind of help us out and give some guidelines here around what kind of accommodation we can actually put a stop to, and which kind is okay to keep doing. We don't want to. We're not in the business of like eliminating fear. We can't do that anyway. Fear is adaptive. It's going to be helpful in some situations. But again, this distinction can be difficult to make. Is this a fear? Is this like an excessive anxiety, or is this in some way that the child needs to learn how to get over this kind of fear or manage this emotion. There's a couple different types of accommodations. We have participation and modification. Participation is that in the moment, participating in the anxiety, kind of regulating the emotion for them. Modification is the things about the family, the household, the routines that are tweaked over time or change over time in order to prevent the child from ever becoming anxious. So this is that kind of thing I was talking about earlier. As long as we spend a bunch of time at night looking for bugs and making sure there are no bugs in the room, my child is fine. So this quickly becomes part of the routine. And I think after a while, parents start to ask themselves, like, why are we doing this? Like, when did this even start? How did we get here? And so we got to kind of back up and kind of ask ourselves some questions about, when can we cut this out? When do we need to be in there and comforting our child? So Space does a good job of breaking down and giving some pretty good examples for all anxiety disorders for kids. I just kept in a couple here for separation and social anxiety. But the participation parts of it, you've probably seen a bunch of times. Things like sleeping in a child's bed, responding to a lot of phone calls during the day, walking your child into school every day rather than just dropping them off. And then we have the modification where we're kind of we're changing a lot about the family routines, the family dynamics. So maybe maybe the parents are never going out on dates, they're never meeting up with friends because the kid can't handle being in with a babysitter, or any kind of after school activity or anything, the parent has to be there. Any kind of field trip, the parent has to accompany the class. And so this takes away from a lot of the parents' autonomy, the life that they might want to live, because they have to be there for their child in order to make sure they don't have these kind of anxiety attacks or excessive anxiety here. So I like to show parents this cycle, because I think it pretty clearly paints this picture of like how we got here. How did this maybe start, and why is this so much a part of our normal lives, and we stopped questioning it. So in this example, we have a child who's potentially afraid to go back to maybe he was headed out the door, forgot his backpack, too scared to go through the house alone to get his backpack. So there's some distress felt by walking through the house by himself. So, if you're a parent and you have kids and you got to get out the door in the morning, sometimes you just go. It takes too long to do a whole CBT coping with this anxiety kind of thing. So you just go with them just to get it done and get out the door on time. So they go with him. So the child gets the backpack, gets off to school. Mom came and got it with me. This is good. So over time, we could be sending this message that the only way I can go get stuff from another room is if mom comes with me. So we might be sending this message that, yeah, the house is scary. There might be bad stuff in the house. There might be threat or danger in the house if you go alone. So I will come with you and you will be okay then. So we're kind of feeding into this some of this anxiety unintentionally, of course. We're just trying to move things along. And so the parents continue to accommodate, and the child continues to avoid. If the house is dangerous, if the house is scary, what else might be scary? What else is a little too dangerous for me? What else do I need mom and dad to come with me to? And so we start to accommodate more and more, and we dig ourselves kind of a bigger hole. Okay, so I'm jumping up and down on parents a lot here, and I think when we have parents in session, it's going to be important to tell them that this is not all their fault. Okay, that they might play some role in their child's anxiety, but there are likely many factors that are playing into the current condition here. Why this child has this anxiety disorder could be from all kinds of things. Parental accommodation is potentially one of them. The reason we talk about parental accommodation here is because it's something we can change. It's something that we have some pretty direct control over, and that's controlling and changing parental attention. It can be difficult to kind of, do, behavioral, even difficult to do cognitive interventions for anxiety with young children. So we don't have a ton of control there. We do have a lot more influence over parental accommodation. And so it can be something that we can structure out. We can use this program to change their behavior and hopefully influence the child's anxiety enough to where we start to see some progress. So does it work? Yeah, it works. We have some studies. There are a bunch of studies here. These are probably the 5 biggest ones. There's definitely been some more. This is a picture of L.A. Leibowitz over here up at the Yale Child Study Center, who's kind of heading all of this research. So he's done SPACE is based on this parenting program called Nonviolent Resistance so it's aimed at handling aggressive behaviors and kind of big outbursts. It helps parents to learn how to de-escalate childhood aggressive outbursts. And so it follows a lot of those steps. It's modeled after that program. And so it pretty well, it does a good job of applying to social and separation anxiety as well as OCD. And since I took the training, they've made some specific trainings for failure to launch for some of the young adults who are having a tough time getting out of their parents' house, getting a job, becoming independent, and for some of the restrictive eating of smaller children. So it's got about a lot of applications, and I've definitely used it for all types of childhood anxiety, and I think it's been useful to kind of do the whole program all the way through for sure, to kind of pick and choose a little bit the different modules, kind of where parents need it. And I think it's also helped some of my parents kind of manage some of their own anxiety. It gives them something of a structure to kind of present a brave kind of coping model to their kids. They take their job of parenting very seriously. So it becomes not just about coping with their anxiety, but being a good parent. And so they take that seriously, and they do a pretty good job. There's a couple different parts of SPACE. So increasing support and decreasing accommodation. So there's definitely more to the decreasing accommodation. There's definitely more steps to that, and I'll kind of go through there. I'll kind of go through all of that. The increasing support is really just, if y'all will excuse me for just a second.
Forgot to alert everybody. Dr. Schexnaildre's daughter is homesick with him. She's 3 years old, so she is likely coming in from some assistance restarting gratitude.
Okay, I'm back. Caleb, am I back? Okay, good. Thanks. Sorry about that, everybody. Got my 3-year-old at home today. So, and this is kind of what I was talking about, where you can kind of see where parents are. Some parents already have a lot of supportive language, and are really supportive. They're also accommodating as well. So you can go through the supportive language stuff pretty quickly, and then get to the meat of the treatment, where you decrease the accommodation. So we're going to start with increasing support here. Next up. All right. So when children are expressing fear, especially when they're expressing fear to something that we as parents judge to be unnecessary fear, excessive fear, something they don't need to be afraid of, we typically respond a couple different ways, either protective or demanding. Protective are those the comforting, very nurturing parents who are like, oh, I can't have this thing, whatever it is, scaring my child, so I need to step in and help them cope with it or manage it myself. We also have these demanding parents. These are kind of the pushers who are saying, no, you got to go. You got to go to the party. You got to go to school. And you have to be independent. I'm sick of this, whining like this. And then a lot of even really supportive parents express their support, but then they put this "but" in the sentence, and it kind of takes away from the support and can drive home the fear or invalidate some of the anxiety. And I'll speak to that in just a second. You probably know what I'm talking about, though. Okay. So the mac and cheese thing is straight from Kelly Leibowitz. I stole that. So we got to have two components here, two parts of the language to really equal support, just like you need the noodles and the cheese to get the mac and cheese. Okay. So we got to have acceptance and validation. We also have to have confidence. The acceptance and validation piece are probably something you're really familiar with, kind of naming that emotion, identifying the emotion, or helping the child identify it, accepting that it's there, accepting that we feel this way, very validating. The confidence is a little bit, there's like kind of a twist on the confidence. So it's not that when we express confidence in our children, we don't want to express it that they can carry out the task or go do the thing. So like, not that you can go to the party, or not that you can speak to the server at the restaurant, but it's the confidence that you can manage the emotion, that you can cope with the anxiety, or however you want to word it. So a couple examples here. I see that this is really hard for you, and I'm 100% sure that you can handle it. So not that you can do it, but that you can handle what's going on inside. We know that you get scared when we don't come with you to get things from your room, but we're sure you'll be okay. We're sure that you'll be okay, even if you feel this kind of icky feeling, this negative emotion, however you want to word it. So that's kind of the emphasis, and it takes some parents a little while to learn it. I like to do some role plays and even some practice here on how to express that confidence, because it's easy to say, I can see that you're nervous right now. I can see that you're a little bit nervous, but I bet you can go and slide on that big slide that you're afraid of. And that's really close. And we just need to kind of guide the parents a little bit more. And they usually get it pretty quick. Okay, so here's a little quiz. So I'm not gonna like embarrass anybody. If anyone wants to shout out an answer, you can, but you don't have to. I'm just gonna give it to you. So we're trying to figure out if this is a demanding statement, a protective statement, or a supportive statement. All right, so here's the first one. It looks like you're feeling a little nervous. I bet you can cope with that emotion. That's gonna be supportive. It's got the validation and the confidence that they can manage the emotion. Okay, very good. I don't care if you're scared, you have to go to school. So pretty clearly, that's demanding. We know you're afraid of sleeping in your bed alone, and we're certain you can deal with that feeling. Probably supportive, yeah. That's what you guys were thinking. I can tell. Last time you tried to play in your soccer game, you had a panic attack, so I just told your coach you quit.
Protective.
Protective, very good. Amy, awesome, very good. And here's the last one. I can see that you're nervous, but I'm sure that you can go to the birthday party.
Supportive.
Almost. Very, very close. So
Protective.
it's I don't know if it doesn't really fall into any of the categories super well. It's kind of a trick question. I mean, like I kind of that's so we have the validation piece really well. What we're lacking is the confidence that they can manage the emotion. We're expressing here a confidence that they can do the task, that they can get through the birthday party, and we want to tweak that a little bit and just say we know that you can cope with this emotion, you can manage this feeling, however, whatever kind of language you want to say. So that one's really close. That's what you hear a lot from like really great parents. You hear these kinds of statements, and so it just takes a little bit of training to get them to change that last part. Okay, so that is all that goes into increasing support. Okay, so we definitely want more and more of those kinds of statements just in their parenting interactions with their kids. Okay, so now we're moving on to just decreasing accommodation, which has a few steps, and these are the steps. So we want to map out the current accommodation and see how it's going. Choosing specific targets, making a plan for eliminating some of that accommodation, informing the child, and then implementing that plan. Informing the child is a big important part of this. We'll kind of walk through the steps of that, and then finally implementing that plan. All right. So for mapping the accommodation, we're trying to find, again, these parenting behaviors where the parents are either participating in the anxiety or changing big things about their normal lives in order to prevent anxiety. So there's a bunch of questions I try to pose to parents to get them to help them map this stuff out. And I'll kind of show you how we do this. We kind of go through their day. But this is like a selection of some of the questions we try to ask here. And see, is this going to qualify? Is this something that we, is potentially attributing to the child's anxiety? So we start with a blank one of these. We have all the times of day, what happens, who's involved, and then how often. And so this is kind of already filled in. So you can see for this example family, we have this girl, Natalie, and the parents are doing a good bit to accommodate her. She probably has some separation anxiety. And so the parents are working really hard to keep her comfortable. So she's asking a lot of questions in the morning about after school activities and after school, and even in the mornings and things. Parents are answering all these questions every day. Mom's picking up Natalie even though there's a bus available. Mom stays within eyesight all the time at any kind of sporting event that she's going to, even though mom could go run some errands and come back and pick her up. She's looked after. In the house, mom is doing this thing where she makes announcements as she moves from room to room, so that Natalie always knows exactly where she is. Natalie doesn't want to go to the bathroom by herself, so the mom usually goes with her. They provide a special dinner for her. If the family is eating something else, they make her something very she has a kind of a restricted diet. They lie in bed with her. They go to the bathroom with her. They do a lot of accommodating if she has nightmares. And they really, as some of the modification, they don't really go anywhere. They don't ever have a babysitter. They might not meet up with friends or go on dates or anything. Okay, so there's a lot of accommodation there. Sometimes it's hard to get parents to admit to some of these things. There is some kind of shame about, or maybe some embarrassment about it. But I try to comfort these parents and let them know that like this is okay. Like a lot of parents are doing a lot of these same behaviors. The more we have, the more choices we have, the more helpful it's going to be down the road to when we do pick a target. And probably the easier it's going to be to actually change some of these behaviors. So when we're picking a target, we want to make sure this is a significant problem in the family. The parents are tired of doing it. It comes up frequently enough. So you see how we definitely have some of these things that are going on every day, every night. Those would be great to pick as a target. Something that's anxiety related, pretty narrow in scope, so we can give the parents something super like focused and targeted to concentrate on. And we even tell parents, like, go ahead and accommodate all the other stuff. We might pick like 1 or 2 targets at the beginning, and just keep accommodating the other things. And that's okay. We can probably move on to those other things later. We definitely don't want to stop accommodating everything. That would be way too much work on the parents. We would just see extinction bursts all day, every day. And so we're going to kind of really have a narrow scope here. We also want to gauge as best we can the parents' motivation, something that they are actually going to change, something that they are willing to change. We might have a really, really great target picked out. Maybe it's meaningful and it's causing a lot of problems, but the parents have a lot of trouble actually stopping the behavior because in the moment it's just too hard for them. That's okay. That's fine. The parents are dealing with a lot of emotions too. They're going to have a lot of guilt probably when they stop, providing this kind of comfort. And so sometimes that guilt or whatever emotion is just a little too much for them. And so we try to pick something that's a little easier to extinguish, to stop. And even if they come back, after a couple sessions, they're just like, I can't do it. That's okay. We'll pick a different target. That's all right. If we did a good job when we were mapping, we probably have a big selection. So I highlighted a couple of targets that we could choose in that example mapping that we picked. So mom making announcements as she walks around the house, mom and dad lying in bed with Natalie while she's falling asleep. And then I put in green something that we're going to kind of work into the plan, walking her back to bed after she's had a nightmare. So those are going to be the 2 targets. Those are like the big ones that this family kind of chose to work on, think they can actually change, and that think they're going to be meaningful and have a good effect for the child. Okay, so in the plan, so we know what the parents are doing. Now we need to figure out what they're going to do instead, when they're going to do it, how often they're going to do it. How are they going to cope with the child's reactions? How are they going to cope with their own anxiety and guilt? So it's a good way to talk about all this, to get all this out. It's particularly helpful if you have a 2-parent household, because they can kind of game plan. They probably know who this is going to be harder on, and that's a cue for the other parent to really be supportive and help them out. We want to be as specific as possible to make sure that everybody knows exactly what the game plan is, and we can always make revisions. We probably will make revisions. I don't think I've made a plan without revising it later on. It usually needs some tweaking because we just get some more data as the plan gets into place, and so that data is useful to kind of switch some things around. So the plan is, mom and dad are going to move around the house without making any kind of announcements. That's going to happen every day. And for bedtime, we came up with this whole program around a bedtime pass and a really solid bedtime routine. So we're going to have a bedtime routine. We're going to read books, be very affectionate, and then lights out, leaving her room. She gets a bedtime pass. If you're probably familiar with the bedtime pass intervention. If she cries or has any kind of emotional outburst, mom and dad are going to ignore it, go to their bedroom. They're going to support each other, potentially listen to music to drown out some of the crying. They're going to make supportive statements to Natalie, also to each other, and they're going to do this every night. So with the bedtime pass, Natalie can come down once, get some affection, turn in the pass, and parents walk her back up, and she has to go back to bed. But if she keeps the bedtime pass, she can turn it in the morning for a reward. So that's a plan. So now we have to let the kid know. It's only fair that we tell her that things are about to change, and this might be a little scary for you. So a written announcement is highly recommended. If for nothing else, it kind of guarantees that we get out all the language that we need to, that it's still supportive, but it's firm in saying that this is going to be happening in the house now. We try to get as many caregivers there as we can, pick a time of low stress, and we're going to be prepared for some reactions. They might get pretty angry. So there's a pretty solid template that Space provides for parents. And I'll show you an example in just a second, but this is kind of the rubric or the template for composing one of these letters. Positive opening statement, supportive statement about anxiety, acknowledging that accommodation is not helping. Like, we've been doing this and it's not helping. It might even be making this worse. And we want to help to make it better. This is what we're going to do now. We're confident this can work. This is not a punishment. This is in no way, we're not trying to be mean to you. We're actually trying to help you. And then we close with something positive as well. So here's an actual letter. This one came from, I think in the training that I did, this came from, like, I was in a small group, and this is the letter we came up with. So, dear Natalie, we love you very much, and we are so proud of how brave you've been in handling your worries over the past few months. We know that you feel nervous when you are not sure where mom is in the house. So mom has been telling you when she changes rooms. But now we realize that this is not helping your fears get better. From now on, from the time you get home from school until bedtime and on the weekends, she will move from room to room as she needs to without telling you. We will all be in the house together. And we know you'll be able to find us if you need us. We know this might be scary for you, but we're confident that you can handle this. So there's a supportive statement there. We're all on your team in the battle with your worries, and we know that we can win. Love, Mom and Dad. So very, very supportive, very validating, but firm in saying this is about to happen. And we know this might be scary for you, but this is what we're doing. And we're, parents are kind of providing this united front, and we're committed to this. So you can get all kinds of different reactions. I get a lot of ignoring, actually. Kids just are like, I'm not accepting this, whatever. You see some whining and crying, some arguing, and every once in a while you see some pretty aggressive meltdowns, destructive kind of things. So we'll talk to, we have the Space has a kind of a whole program, kind of a whole piece of it to, like, how to de-escalate some of those things, how to help out if the child is being particularly aggressive. If they're ignoring, you just go with it. You were very clear in your statements. They heard you. Okay. So we implement the program. We start the next day. We monitor progress. We can praise bravery. We can do some positive praise there. Watch out for setbacks. We can kind of keep in mind and give parents a heads up about setbacks, or maybe you slip up and accommodate, and that's okay. Making sure these parents support each other, and sometimes even get support from other people, because they're making big changes in their family. This might be difficult, especially if the child has other caregivers, if they rely on grandparents or babysitters or something. Definitely get their help, even their friends, if they just need to talk about how hard this is. Get that support from other people. And then once things are settled and that target is taken care of, we can kind of plan for the next one. I've only been doing this for a few years, but I've never had to plan for more than like a couple of targets. After a couple targets, the vast majority of the anxiety is resolved. So it works pretty efficiently. Okay. So for some of these disruptive responses, I emphasize pretty heavily that these kids might get they might get disruptive. They might get out of hand, very loud, very intense. Um, Half of fight or flight is fight. This is them fighting. This is them fighting to keep that accommodation in place. It's going to look like behavior problems. It might look like opposition or defiance or something, but at the heart of it, it's probably anxiety. And this program is aimed to treat that anxiety. If we can just get through some of the tougher moments, we'll probably have a lot of success on the back end. Watch out for that extinction burst. This is something I talk to parents a lot about. I give them a lot of examples. And if they do, if these parents are seeing extinction bursts, I said that's good. This is a good thing. You're doing such a good job changing your behavior. The kids have noticed, and they're changing their behavior. They're coming at it with more frustration. They normally don't last very long, so keep it up. You're doing a good job. This part, and kind of giving them a plan of how to manage some of the disruptive behaviors, comes directly from the nonviolent resistance parenting program. So it's before, during, and after. When you're coming into this, remember, ignore any kind of minor misbehavior. Use those supporters, call people if you need to, schedule meetings or time with friends, things like that. During the behavior, maintain safety, of course. If the behavior is getting too aggressive or too out of hand, ignore what you can. Give them a red light. So this is kind of being like declarative and very certain of anything that you say no to, or we're not doing this anymore. This comes from like an example of like it's like when you tell your kids no, and you're like, I don't know, probably not. We probably can't do that. That's kind of like a yellow light, and they see that as like, oh, if I just bother you more, maybe I can get a green light. Maybe you'll say yes. So it's give them a firm red light and make it clear that this is not negotiable. This is what's happening. And we can definitely throw in some attention for doing a good job, for accepting the program at any stage. Even if initially they didn't accept it, and they start to, we can kind of do some of that catch and being good, or catch and being brave. We noticed that you've done a really good job. We haven't been talking about us moving across from room to room, and you've kind of just been doing your thing, and I think you're doing a really great job, and we're proud of you. And then after de-escalation, remember, we're dealing with anxiety and not necessarily defiance, so we don't want to do any punishments necessarily. That might come into play at some point, but we don't want to be thinking that is kind of a first response. We want to discuss the process in a really supportive manner. Remember, a lot of our supportive statements, and again, getting support from other adults, other people. So who are these other people? Pretty much anyone who cares about the family. These can be, family members, grandparents, just friends that you have, anything like that. So these supporters they can do a lot, they can do a little. It kind of just depends on their role already in the family and how much the parents really need them. So they can just listen, they can be supportive, that can actually help implementing the plan. They can intervene in a crisis and really keep everyone safe. So that ends up being really helpful. The space is very, very, it emphasizes these getting support from these other people a whole lot. Okay. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm doing all right. So these are the resources. So spacetreatment.net is a really great resource. This is kind of put together by Ellie Leibowitz. It's got the ways to sign up for the trainings. It links to all the latest articles coming out that they're publishing. It has the coverage in the news, on the podcasts, all kind of stuff. And it's got a forum for just posing questions to people. These are the 3 books that have come out lately. So the one all the way on the right is a parent, is like for parents. So it's good to kind of give that to parents, let them read through it while you're going through the program. It spells out all the different steps that we went through today in a lot of detail, and kind of gives parents support and everything. And my favorite is probably this one in the middle for clinicians. It provides kind of the most, like, it's kind of a clinician manual basically. But I've liked all of these books. They've been really helpful. There's also a lot of other resources at the website. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for having me. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you so much for presenting to us today. It's super helpful. One question I had is there like an upper age limit on where you would want to use these strategies, or where they may feel, I don't know, just thinking about with teenagers, you could probably adapt most of these things. There might not be, but.
Yeah. Let me think. I don't know. I don't think there's really like an upper age limit, because I think the only thing that you would have to ensure is happening is that there's a member of the household that has anxiety, and that the parents are accommodating that anxiety. I guess I can stop sharing now. But like I said, like they're adapting this to failure to launch families. So, these college age and even after college, the same basic principles apply. And it's kind of changing the parental behavior, so that they can treat this anxiety really well, and then create some more independence in these older these kind of younger adults. Yeah.
I had a question as well. One of the questions I had was, when you're working with clients that have extreme abuse or trauma, how does the modality of this model, because they can blend with that anxiety as well, some of the things you're talking about. So I just wanted to know the approach specific to this model.
I haven't had any families kind of come from that background, no. And yeah, it would get trickier dealing with kids who have experienced a lot of trauma, and seeing kind of some of their reactions. I think a lot of the same principles would apply. I think I would for the caregivers, I guess I would be expecting a lot more like bigger outbursts, bigger reactions to notifying the child of the changes that are coming up, but also just like the actual carrying out the interventions, stopping the accommodations. I would lean heavy on how we're going to manage these outbursts, and how we're going to manage these outbursts, like coming up with like a very detailed, like step-by-step plan that is like a lot of ignoring what you can, but also de-escalating, relying on the supporters, and making sure the parents are motivated enough to do this in the first place, or like the caregivers are motivated enough to do this, because like we really don't want to half-ass this. We want to do it all the way. We don't want them to do it 50% and it just be kind of a chore or a bother or something that is causing more distress in the family. And it just might not be a good time for them to do that. And that's going to be something to assess as well.
That question makes me think about, like, one of the things that really stood out to me as you were talking is that focus on the parental language and the parental response, and how that piece alone could be so helpful for foster parents. Just how we're wording as we're working with kids who've experienced trauma to hit that supportive balance, which is often so hard for our foster parents to like, because they want to help, and they feel like they are helping. And so that part, I imagine, for me will be like the first thing that I try across lots of modalities. But like, let's talk about how you're supporting your anxious child and how you're talking to them. that part was really neat.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes along with like even just managing behavior problems in little kids. Like you start with positivity, like you start with positive praise and catch them being good. And so it goes along with that kind of model because there's so much negativity in families like that a lot of the time. And we got to kind of switch gears and show parents like how powerful those kinds of statements can be, and how much that's going to influence the situation a lot, and maybe we don't have to do all this punishment later on. So yeah, that felt comfortable to me. It felt familiar when I learned that piece. So I definitely like that a lot too, that part with the language.
Any other questions from anybody? I hope everybody will join me in thanking Dr. Schexnaildre again for taking the time to come join us. I think it's just so helpful, again, just having these additional tools for working with kids who are anxious and supporting parents when so often the kids don't want to talk about their anxiety. And so we're left with, what do we do then? And I think this is an excellent tool to add to everyone's toolbox. Oh, there's something in the chat. Dustin says, I wonder if a certain amount of accommodation might be needed in foster kids, at least initially, to build trust. A lot of them are coming from backgrounds where parents did the opposite and did not respond adequately to needs. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah, leaning heavy on the warmth, and yeah, sending a message that we're gonna protect you from from the dangerous stuff. Yeah, doing all that first. Might need to build on the relationship a good bit first, and then maybe later on we can start stopping the accommodation.
Well, and the other thing too, and I think you highlighted this earlier, is it's not about stopping all the accommodations simultaneously, right? You're very much avoiding that. You're picking one thing while you're continuing to accommodate the other. So it's not like you're doing everything at once, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and look, before we finish up, come on out. Come on. Come say hi.
Jules, it's the big stage, Jules. Come say hey.
Say hi to everybody on the computer.
And while we're admiring Jules, the survey will be in the chat momentarily. Hey, Jules.
Hi.
You say hey?
I was sick this morning, huh? Fix her hair or anything.
But if everybody make sure to click the link in the chat to do the survey. And once you've completed that survey, that's how you get your certificate for participation today. I also really want to encourage everybody, if you have ideas for future presentations, please put those in the survey. We read those and use that to guide our future presentations. I also want to encourage everybody to tune back in with us next month on May the 20th, when we will have Dr. Edward Makis come to present to us about working with challenging families, how to use some family therapy strategies to work with challenging families. And again, Dr. Schexnaildre and Jules, thank you so much for coming and presenting and talking with us today.
Thank you so much for having us. It was a pleasure. Hope this was helpful. And my email was on the presentation. Feel free to shoot me any questions. I'm happy to help out with anything.
Very good. And I'm going to put your email in the chat just so.
Okay.
Everybody has it.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope y'all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you all for joining us today.
Bye, everybody. Say bye-bye.